Moment to thank the owners of this remarkable home for selecting us to market and sell their property, and to introduce my colleagues you'll notice throughout the crowd here tonight. They're here for your assistance should you require their advice. Please feel free to approach either Ron, Warren, Rose, I saw floating around, Daniel, Alex, and of course Gino Vernucci and Ioannou, who I'm sure many, if not all of you, have had the great pleasure of becoming acquainted with throughout the marketing campaign. I'd like to share with you now the following announcements, which are in place to help you, the buyers, bid and buy with confidence. The auction will be conducted in accordance with the rules and any additional conditions that remain available for inspection before the start of the auction. The auction rules prohibit an auctioneer from accepting bids or offers for a property after the property has been knocked down to the successful bidders. The vendors have a reserve price, as the auctioneer will indicate bidders on request. The law prohibits false bids, prohibits major disruptions by bidders, and prohibits bidders attempting to prevent others from bidding, and provides for fines for such conduct. The rules permit for vendor bids. The words I'll use during the auction to indicate that I'm making a bid on behalf of the vendor are vendor bid, and by law only I, as the auctioneer, can make a vendor bid. The contract of sale has been on display prior to tonight's auction. It reads that tonight Harcourts, Rata and Co. sells for on behalf of the vendor all that land together with any improvements described in the attached copy of title, volume 10704, folio 559, or as it's more commonly known to you and I, as number 4 Charteris Grove here in Epping. Selling with the property today all fixed floor coverings, light fittings, fixed window furnishings and any other fixtures and fittings of a permanent nature. Tonight, once the property is sold, we will call on the successful purchaser to pay deposit equal to 10% of the purchase price upon the fall of the hammer, and the signing of the contracts here tonight, and the balance to be paid at settlement in a flexible 30 to 60 days time, at which time the vendor will provide the lucky buyer with vacant possession of the property. Attached to and forming part of the contract is the vendor statement pursuant to section 32 of the Sale of Land Act. This document includes a copy of the certificate of title, as well as any relevant council, planning and zoning information. All in all, quite a straightforward contract. Everything's in here. Everything is quite clear. So buyers, is with my highest recommendation what we offer you for your consideration and competition here tonight. There's no better Christmas present than Melbourne property, and there's no better Melbourne property at the moment than Epping. Epping is on absolute fire. We've had enormous growth in recent years, enormous growth in 2020 and 2021, and for good reason, especially here in Charteris Grove, where we see up and down the street quality homes whose owners tend to their gardens and tend to their homes, knowing that they live in a special pocket, because here in Charteris we have absolute access to everything that you need to provide a premium lifestyle for you and your family. Easy access to parkland as close as the end of the street, not far away at all from great options in terms of shopping and schools, and of course the bus and Findon Road taking you to Epping Station or Plenty Valley, South Morang and South Morang Station, again providing simple access into the city. Add to that a quality built home whose owner has looked after the property. I'm sure you can tell by the moment you walk through the door how well this property has been looked after, how much it has been loved, and the memories created here. I'm sure many of you are looking forward to creating your own memories at number 4 Charteris Grove. And that first one gets created right here tonight for you and your family, the opportunity to get those keys at the end of those proceedings. So buyers, if that is your goal, if you'd like to have those keys in your pocket, and I think you can move in just after Christmas, 30 days. I can't believe it's almost the end of the year. But if that is your goal and you want to put the sold sticker up at the end of this auction, now buyers, is your time to reserve that exclusive right. Where can I see a fair and reasonable starting bid for number 4 Charteris Grove here in Epping? At 700,000, a bit light on, but I go with you at 700,000. Invite participation in rises of 25 for 700 got. At 700,000 now, it's going to be 725 in the rise. At 700,000. At 700,000 now, fairly been offered at 700 the bid. At 725 now, there against the car on the phone at 25 now and 50 the call. At 725,000, bid behind, opportunity front. No, I'm not taking 10. I'm taking 25 in the rise. It's got to be 50. At 750 now, and I would think so at 750,000. At 7.5 and make it 7 3/4 in the rise. So at 750 the bid. At 750,000, one bid not enough here tonight, sir. 750 now. At 775 now, got. At 775,800 beckons. At 775 the bid. At 775,800 in the rise is the call. I'm not taking 10, sir. Make it 800 in the rise. At 775,000, fairly been offered. At 775,800 now, and I would think so. At 800,000, even money at that. At 800,000 now, opportunity with you, sir, on the phone against the car again at 800,000. At 800,000, third bid might be the lucky one for you. At 800,000, fairly been offered. 825, can I suggest in the rise at 800 I have. At 800,000 now. At 800,000, fairly been offered now. If I take his 10, this gentleman up the front's going to absolutely kill me because I refuse his twice. At 800,000. At 800,000. You wouldn't do that to me, sir, would you? at 800,000 now. At 25, at 825 now, at 825, and the bid's again behind the opportunity in front. At 825 now, at 825,000, fairly been offered. Bit quiet on this side of the proceedings, or this side of the auction, at 825,000. At 825,000, the bid's behind you, sir, the opportunity's in front. At 825 now, fairly been offered. At 825,000 once, at 825. At 825,000 twice, at 825. At 825,000, the bid for the third and final call at 825,000 the bid. All done, all finished.
Now would you take 10?
I'll take your 10 now, sir, at 835. And I'll give you the same courtesy, sir, 10 if you like. At 835 for Haverhill, perhaps round me off to 50. At 835,000, the bid's in front at 835. At 835,000 now, fairly been offered at 835. At 835, inching never closer here tonight. At 835,000, fairly been offered now at 835. At 835, the window of opportunity in 2021 to get into this booming property market at 40 now. Gotten the same courtesy at 5 if you like, sir, at 40 I have. At 840,000, the opportunity to get into this booming property market in 2021. The window is rapidly closing, but the opportunity belongs here tonight at 840,000. The bid's there. Only cost you 5 to get on top. 10's a better bid though. At 840,000, bid there across the road. Opportunity with you, sir, and you, sir, on the phone at 840. The bid at 840, at 845 now and 50. It's got to be at 845,000. Bid back here on this side of the street against you, sir, on that side at 800 at 840. Can I say 47 and a half? At 847, I'll take the 47. At 847, did you say sell, Gino? We're selling on the market at 47 now. At 847, I have. At 847, the bid's there now, so 847,000. We're on the market and selling. I'm not going inside. There's no halftime break. Gino and George have done the work for me. They've confirmed my instructions with the vendor. At 847,000, I'm out here until we sell. At 847 now, we're on the market and playing for keeps. Make no mistake, you don't bid tonight, you don't buy. At 500, 847 and a half. At 847,500 on the market, sir. Selling here tonight. 847 and a half now. And we sell away no better bid. 847,500 once at 847 and a half. 848 now at 848. At 848,000, fairly been offered. 848, sir. 850, surely. 848,000, the bid's there at 848 now. We're on the market and selling here tonight. At 848,000, fairly been offered now at 848. At 848,000, sir, still on the phone seeking instructions. At 848, we're definitely done. At 848. At 848,000, bid there across the road. Opportunity with you, sir. Looks like it's down to 2. At 848 and a half now. 848,500. 848,500. Bid back here, back against you, sir. 50, can I say? 850 now got at 850,000 the bid. At 850,000, bid there across the road. Opportunity again on this side, sir, with you and your family. At 850 I have. At 850 the bid, and we sell away no better bid. At 850,000, bid there right through those windows. At 850 now. At 850,000 and a half now. At 850 and a half. At 850,500. 850 and a half now. At 850 and a half, sir. Give me a bigger bid than that if you want to buy. Can I suggest 855 in the rise? 852, it's a little bit bigger than half. I'll take it at 852. At 852,000. At 852,000, bid back there now, sir, at 852. 853, can I suggest in the rise? Well, 855 is better at 852 now. 852,000, bid there across the road. Opportunity here, I am selling tonight, sir, at 852,000. The bid's there, the keys are there. You want those keys, you have to bid me now or forever hold your peace at 852,000. Once at 852, done. At 852,000 twice at 852, done. Finished. Third, final call at 500 now. 5,000, sir, 500? 500. At 500, wow, it's a bit cheeky, man. You never know, 5,000 would have put you in better stead of 800. 854 straight back in. 854 the quick retort, sir. At 854,000. Small bids embolden the competition to come along. Big bids, statement bid, locks the competition out. It says, I'm here to buy. Don't compete against me. At 854,000, the bid's there. Statement bid from you, sir, might get you those keys. At 854,000, 55 I'll take now at 855. At 855,000, to give you the same advice, sir, at 857 now. At 857,000, we're back there now at 855. 857 the bid. At 857,000, fairly been offered at 857. At 857,000, fairly been offered now at 857. Always a good sign that you're buying the right house when the street's packed on auction day. At 857,000, the bid's there. The opportunities here, sir, at 500 now, at 857 and a half. At 857, 500 now. At 857 and a half, 60 surely, sir, in the rise at 60 got. At 860,000. At 860,000 now. At 860,000, he took my advice, sir. Can I say 2.5 in the rise or 5? At 860 in the bids, then we're selling. At 860 the bid. At 860,000 now, do we sell away at that? Only you can let me know, so it's up to you. At 860,000. At 860,000, bid for the keys or let them keep them. At 860,000, fairly been offered once. At 860, done. At 860, you're definitely done over there, sir. Twice. At 860,000. At 500, not 5,000? No? The third time I might get that 5,000 from you, sir. At 860 and a half now. At 860,500. At 800, can I confirm that? Al, 860,500, 860 and a half now. At 860,500. 863 now. At 863,000 now. $2,500 bid on top. Round me off to 865, sir. 870 sounds so much better. At 863,000, fairly been offered. Bid there across the road. Opportunity again on this side with you. At 863 now, got to sell. At 863,000. At 863,000, sir. At 65 and a great bid at that at 65. At 865, sir, take out the big guns. Give me 70 in the rise. At 865,000, the bid's there now at 865 the bid. 865,000 bid there against you at 865. 70 at 865 now once at 865. At 865,000 twice at 865. 868. At 868,000 now 70 beckons for you, sir. At 868. 868 and the bid's back there across the road at 868,000. 868,000 now fairly been offered now at 868. 870 will get you ahead at 868,000 now fairly been offered at 868 on the market. Well and truly selling here tonight at 868,000. In the absence of any further bidding, we'll sell at that to the highest bidder across the road. You have the opportunity to prevent that, sir, to put those keys in your pocket at 868,000, but I need to hear from you now at 868,000. First call at 868 or done. At 868,000 twice at 868. Third. At 71 and a great bid at that, sir, at 871,000. 871,000 bid there, raising the stakes, up in the ante at 871 now. At 871,000 now at 871. At 871,000, best response to a big bid is another big bid at 871,000. Fairly been offered bid there, keys are there, selling away here tonight at 871. 873 now at 873. At 873,000, bid back there across the road now, sir. At 873,000, again the ball is in your court, the opportunity with you. At 873, the bid's there. At 873,000, I need to know at 873. At 873,000 now, fairly been offered at 873 for the first call at 873,000, all done. Twice at 873,000, done. Finished. Third. Final call at 873,000 the bid. All done, all finished, silent out. How about one of those trademark $500 bids, sir? And then I'll ask you if it's 5,000. You can correct me, it's 500 and we'll go ahead at 873. At 873,000, the bid's there. At 873. At 873,000. At 873,000, fairly been offered now at 873. What do you say, sir? Are you still with me or are we done? 75. At 75 now at 875. At 875. He's shaking his head, sir. That's a good sign. Cause for optimism at 875,000. At 875,000, the bid's there now across the road at 875. At 875,000, fairly been offered at 875. At 875,000, up to you now, sir, at 875. The keys are there across the road against you at 875. The bid now at 875,000. You've got to sell at 875. At 875,000. 880's got a good ring to it at 875,000. Fairly been offered now at 875. What do you say? Do we let him have it at that at 875? Once at 875. Twice at 875. 878. at 878 now, at 878,000 now, sir. Last time you bid, they shook their head, indicating that they were out. We have to test the resolve now at 878,000. The bid's across the road. One more bid might get you those keys. As I said, 880 sounds so good. At 878, the bid's there. 878. 878,000. I need to know at 878. At 878,000, round me off to 80, sir. At 878,000, fairly been offered at 878. 878,000 once at 878. I'll give you two, George. Twice at 878, down to one, George. Third, final call at 878,000 the bid. Are we done? At 80 now, at 880. At 880,000, that took a bit of convincing, sir. At 880,000, when the competition is thinking about it, you should be bidding higher and higher. At 880,000, that's how you buy. At 880,000, put the decision right back on their shoulders. At 880,000 now. At 880,000, keep the pressure up if you want to buy. At 880, and the bid's there now, it's against you. At 880, fairly been offered. At 880,000, we sell here tonight in the absence of any further bidding. If you'd like me to give them the keys for good, happy to do that, sir. I just need to know. We're definitely done, sir. At 880, it was a mental barrier at 880. Might be a mental barrier for them. Let's try 881 in the rise. At 882, and that's even better than my suggestion. At 882. At 882,000. Now, sir, he gave you those keys momentarily. At 882,000, indicating that they're at the end of their budget at 882,000. At 882,000, if you want to buy, you might have to stretch just a little bit more here tonight. At 882,000, the bid's there. It's against you at 882, and we're selling here tonight at 882,000. Once at 882, are we all done? Twice at 882,000, are we done? Are we finished? For the third and final call.
Half.
At half, at 882 and a half. I was hoping you'd come in bigger than that, sir, at 882 and a half. I'll take it, though, nevertheless, at 882,500, at 882,500. Such a quiet through it. I haven't had to look for cars once across the road. At 882,500 now. At 882,500, bid there across the road, back against you, sir, at 882 and a half. 882,500 now. 885, can I suggest in the rise? At 882,500. At 882,500, the bid there against you at 882 and a half. At 882,500, what do you say, sir? You still with me, or are we done?
885.
At 885 now. 885,000. 885,000 the bid. At 885,000, bid there again across the road. Again the opportunity with you, sir. At 885,000 now. Fairly been offered at 885. At 885,000 now once at 885. At 885,000 twice at 885. Third, final call at 885,000. All done, finished, silent out at 885. We definitely done. I can't entice you in for another half.
No, that's
80. How about a big statement bid, 890, knockout bid as we call it in the trade? You sure you're definitely done at 885,000? We're definitely done here tonight.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your spirited bidding here tonight. At 885,000, tell me they're out, sir, but it's my job to count to three. At 885,000, that's what I'll do now for you at 885. If you're here to buy, this may be your last chance. At 885,000, first call at 885,000, all done. Second call at 885,000, all done. All finished. Third, final call at 885,000. And a quarter on top at 885 and a quarter at 885,250. Don't estimate the power of a quarter, sir. At 885,000 at 886. Not very powerful, sir. At 886,000. At 886,000 now, fairly been offered. Bid there across the road. Back against you at 886. At 886,000 now. At 886,000, perhaps 90 will get the job done for you here tonight, sir. At 886,000 the bid. At 886,000, fairly been offered. The bid there again across the road. Opportunity again on this side with me at 886,000. First call at 886, all done. Second call at 886,000, done. Finished. Third, final call at 886,000 the bid, all done, all finished. Silent out at 886. Need to know now, so we're definitely done at 886,000. 88, a great bid at that 888,000. At 888,000, back up and running now. At 888, 888,000, back there again. 888, the bid. 888,000 now, fairly been offered. 888, what do you say? 890 in the rise, can I suggest? At 888,000. At 808, sir, if it's worth 888, it's worth 890. At 888,000, surely. It's going to appreciate by Christmas to that. At 888,000, the bid's there against you at 888. At 888,000 now for the first call at 888. All done. Twice. You want to throw in some money? Steve, you want to throw in a little bit? Help him get it? Second call at 888,000. All done. Finished. Third. 1,889. 890 beckons, sir. 889,000. Now, I thought 880 might be that mental barrier, but I might be wrong. It might be 890. At 889,000, the bid's there across the road. 90 will put you in good stead here tonight. At 889,000, fairly been offered now at 889. At 889,000, if there's any more left in the tank, now is the time to spend it. At 889,000, don't walk away leaving anything in the pocket, sir. Make sure you know you're absolutely right in your decision before you walk away. At 889,000, fairly been offered for the first call at 889, all done. At 889,000, second call at 889, all done, all finished. Third, final call at 889,000, the bid, all done, finished, silent and out at 889. Are we definitely done now, sir? You sure? That was sort of a half-hearted nod. No, we're definitely done. Thank you very much for your spirited bidding here tonight at 889,000. I'll give you the count of three one more time to think about it. Once at 889, twice at 889,000. Just confirm those instructions with me, Alex. Third, final call at 889,000. The bid, we're done, finished, silent and out at 889,000. Selling. You sure, sir? Selling. Selling. So, congratulations, well bid. Congratulations to our purchasers and our vendors here tonight. Commiserations to our underbidders. You've just witnessed another successful Harcourts, Rata and Co-auction. All the best for Christmas and the holidays. See you again soon. Thank you. Hopefully we get you to the next